Shabbat Shalom to everyone. What a beautiful day it is to be in the house of Yahweh, right? Oh man, for what a change this is to what we have been doing, right? The day that we've been looking forward to. Hope all of y'all have enjoyed your rest today and also these past weeks. That now that you're energized physically, now it's time to be energized spiritually and feed upon the Word and to give honor and thanks and glory to our Father in heaven that has sustained us through all of this. And we can call upon Him in times of need, and we know that He will be there ever as a Savior, provider, and healer, and whatever that we need. So praise Yah for that. Glad to see y'all coming out this morning. Welcome those that are on Facebook with us. We just appreciate everybody's attention and support of this ministry, and that we'll continue to go forth as the Father leads us. We're going to study the Torah portion this morning. This is Arkea Mavet, which is after the death. These are actually two Torah portions put together. The other one is Kedoshim, which means holy. So we're going to explore those things this morning. It's in Leviticus 16. Also, we might mention that this is the 21st day of counting of the Omar. So we know that as we count up the Omar to the 50th day of Shavuot, or Pentecost as it is known, that this is the count. And what is this all about? Well, we know that the counting started at the day of the wave sheaf offering, which is the day after Shabbat, following the Passover. And this is representative of the day that Yeshua rose from the grave, because he was that wave sheaf offering. That's the reason that he rose that day. And we know as the sun set up on the Shabbat that he came out of the grave early in the morning of the first day. And we know biblically, when we look at the beginnings of the day, it shows in Genesis that the day begins with the evening and the morning, or the first day, and so forth. So as the sun set up on the Shabbat, he rose out of the grave. So we say hallelujah, because he ascended to the heavenly realm to be offered as his offering, or the wave sheaf offering was those that had gone before, those that were in the grave that arose at his resurrection. And those were his trophies of the wave sheaf offering of the dead. So praise Yah for his word that we can be solidly founded upon, and that we don't have to guess and we don't have to ask men, but it's there in the scriptures for us to all to see and to hear and to understand. So 21st day of counting of the Omar. Omar is a measurement of wheat, but it actually shows that we should be weighing each day our own self, our own wheat. Is our wheat going to be ripe and ready at the day of Pentecost or Shavuot, as it is in the scriptures? And we know that day was an historical day, two different times. One, the first in history, was at Mount Sinai, at the giving of the law, was on the day of Shavuot or Pentecost. And then we know that during the time of Yeshua's time, that the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit was poured out upon the 120, and it spread all over the known world at that time. So as we count up to that period of time, examine your life, see how your wheat's getting along, if it's going to be ripe and ready when Shavuot arrives. So as we're going to go on in this, and hopefully we'll learn maybe some few things, or brush up on some things maybe that we've already heard and known and learned. This is in Leviticus 16:1 is where we're going to start. And Yahweh spake unto Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they offered before Yahweh and died. So after the death, is the name of our Torah portion, this part of the Torah portion. So what is so important about after the death? Well, as we read on, we find that it was a very dark day for the family of Aaron, his two sons, and I'm sure that to the whole congregation that was standing there, to hear about the death of these two sons and begin to wonder, well, is God going to kill me also? Am I doing things that will bring about these things? So I'm sure there was a time of worrying, time of asking questions and wondering what was going on. But we see as a result of that Yeshua, that the Messiah, that Jehovah gave Moses some more instructions, about 3 chapters of instructions here to show if you walk in these, you won't have to suffer the things that these two sons suffered. Even though their sin may not be the same as theirs, yet we know that sin utterly brings death. So he launches into whole chapters here of sins that he does not want us to commit. So as we keep this in mind, because we're going to look at the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, and look at some of these things that are here in Leviticus and see if they're in the New Testament. It says, and Yahweh said unto Moses, speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil before the mercy seat which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat. And this is in the most holy place of the tabernacle or sanctuary there. He says, so you can't just come in there any time that you want. In fact, it goes on and says that you can only enter there one time a year, and the high priest is the only one that can enter there one day of a year, and that day is, of course, the atonement, Yom Kippur. And this shall be an everlasting statute unto you, to make an atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as Yahweh commanded Moses. In Leviticus 18:1, and Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them, I am Yahweh your Elohim. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein you dwell, shall ye not do, and after the doings of the land of Canaan, where I'll bring you, shall you not do, neither shall you walk in their ordinances. So, in the chapter of 16 there, he lays out the whole ordinances and things that they must do as the priest in the sanctuary, prepare for the Day of Atonement and the carrying out of the Day of Atonement, for the covering of the sins for the whole nation as a whole. So then he goes on and he says, I don't want you to follow after these ordinances or laws or gods of all these nations that I brought you out of Egypt, bring you into the land of Canaan, where there's more people that are not worshiping the Father. And he says, I want you to and he goes on and says, you shall do my judgments and keep mine ordinances to walk therein. I am Yahweh your Elohim. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. I am Yahweh. So, he's continuing to give us instructions how to live a long life and how to live a life that is in communion with the Father and the Creator of this world. As we go on in verse 6, none of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him to uncover their nakedness. I am Yahweh. The nakedness of thy father, or the nakedness of thy mother, shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother, thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. So this whole chapter here is about actually sexual sins, basically. What to do and not to do. And these are the things that that evidently the nations around were following and committing. And he said, don't do this like these nations that you're in here are doing. Says, as it goes on to 9, the nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or the daughter of thy mother, whether she be born at home or born abroad, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh. So we know that in history we can see that this god Molech, the Canaanites, they offered their children to him on an altar that was a bronze altar that represented basically a calf. And this thing had a head on it, but it had arms on it. They built a fire inside of it, and they would lay the child on his hands. And so he says, don't do that. Don't offer your children to the fire of Molech. So how does that make a connection with today, maybe? Or does it? We don't see anybody burning kids, or do we? How about maybe abortions? Wow. Because a lot of times they use chemicals to burn the child and to kill the child. So, and thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech. It says, thou shalt not lie with mankind or with womankind. It is an abomination. Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down therein. It is confusion. Defile not yourselves in any of these things, for in all of these things the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. And we go on and read, it says, this is the reason that they cast these nations out and going to supplant them with his people Israel, because they are doing these defiling things. They have not only defiled themselves, but they have defiled the actual land itself. So as we go on in Leviticus 18:25, and the land is defiled, therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomited out their inhabitants. So what he's saying is, because of these things that they're doing, I'm going to cause the nation to basically, the land to basically push you out. Well, that would be, how would that happen? How could that happen? Well, how about a severe drought? That would make you move, wouldn't it? That's basically what happened in Egypt, in the whole world, isn't it? Egypt had 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, and it caused people to move. They all moved to Egypt. It's kind of like Odessa. When the oil is really pumping, everybody moves to Odessa. But what happens when the oil stops pumping? Everybody leaves, right? So, but God's in control, right? We must remember that always. It says, ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own nation, nor any stranger that sojourns among you. For all of these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. Wow. That the land spew not you out also, when you defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. So he's giving them a fair warning. He says, if you're going to do the same thing that they were doing, same thing is going to happen to you. You're going to be spewed out of the land. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them shall be cut off from among their people. Therefore shall you keep mine ordinances, that you commit not any one of these abominable customs, which were committed before you, and that you defile not yourselves therein. I am Yahweh your Elohim. So he's setting down a set of rules here, setting down commandments. You know, when we start talking about, well, these are God's commandments, he commanded us to do this, our inward rebellious nature says, no, I don't want, no, nobody going to tell me what to do, But when we look at these as instructions that he's given us to be able to live longer, a more prosperous life, a more prospective life, a life that we can enjoy, So these are instructions. So if we look at this whole thing as instructions for kingdom living, if you're going to live in God's kingdom, these are the instructions that he's given us to be able to follow. But I know men, when we get a set of instructions, when we buy thinking that we're going to have to put together something, we get these instructions, we think, nah, we can put this together. I don't need no instructions. I'm a man, right? But what happens a lot of times when you get done, you're like 3 boats missing or what, that's kind of not this way. And so let's go back and look at the instructions, we'll get it straightened out. So that's what this is about. God is our Father, just like a parent, that we follow instructions and we can put things together properly. But as we move on, it says, but how about after the death of the Messiah Yeshua? Were these commands or instructions changed? If it was so important to bring the attention to the death of these 2 sons because of them offering strange fire in the tabernacle, what about the death of the Messiah? What is he doing? Is he drawing attention to not only him, but is he drawing attention to his instructions? Because when you really think about it, he come for the house of Israel, right? To reconcile to that yearly atonement that is made for the nation of Israel. That was what Yeshua did in his death. But did his death change any of these regulations and laws and commandments? Well, let's find out. Going to Romans 1. Romans 1:1. Paul, a servant of Yeshua the Messiah, called to be an apostle, separated unto the good news of Yahweh, which he had promised aforetime by his prophets in the Holy Scriptures, concerning his son Yeshua the Messiah, our master, which was made of the seed of David according to the flesh, and declared to be the Son of Yahweh with power, according to the Spirit of holiness, by the resurrection from the dead, by whom we have received grace and apostleship for obedience to the faith among all Gentiles, for his name, among whom are ye also the called of Yeshua the Messiah. So he's specifically talking to the Gentiles or nations, the same meaning in our scriptures. And he says that that they were called, Paul and his apostleship, for the obedience to the faith among all Gentiles. So we're going to see, what was this faith? Was it some new faith that Yeshua brought in? Paul didn't take up his work until about 30, 40 years after the cross. So did he make up something new, or did Yeshua bring in something new? Let's continue on reading in Romans and see what all he says. Romans 1:17, for therein is the righteousness of Yahweh revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. For the wrath of Yahweh is revealed from heaven against all wickedness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Now, this what he's saying here, revealed from heaven against all, says the wrath of Yahweh, because of the faith, is still the same faith. But he says the wrath is revealed from heaven against all wickedness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which may be known of Elohim is manifest in them, for Elohim hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and majesty, so that they are without excuse. So he's talking about all the way back to the beginning. It says, so you're without excuse because I've showed you from the beginning. Because that when they knew Elohim, they esteemed him not as Yahweh. Neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. So once again, was it a problem with God's word, with his commandments, or his instructions, or was it a problem with them? And that's what it's throughout the scripture we see. We're even talking about the covenant. In Hebrews it says, there was nothing wrong with the covenant. I had a problem with them because they had a problem with my covenant. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the magnificence of the uncorruptible Elohim into an image made like the corruptible man, into birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore Elohim also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. For this cause Elohim gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. Now Paul is talking after the death of Christ, really relating back to these same instructions that we just read in Leviticus, right? And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one towards another, men with men, working that which is unseemingly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was fit. So, is it okay today to practice these things? Is there any recompense? Is there any punishment that is coming for such actions as it was in the day of Moses, and as it was really all the way back to the beginning of time? Because why was the world destroyed to start with? And Noah and his family was the only ones that come across and was saved. What was the sins? These very sins that was originated there, right outside the garden gate. As we continue on in Romans 1:28, and even as they did not like to retain Elohim in their knowledge, Elohim gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not fit. So basically God says, okay, you know my instructions. If you're not going to follow them, you're kind of basically on your own. See how that works out for you. Turns them over to a reprobate mind, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, and whisperers. Wow. Backbiters, haters of Yahweh, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affections, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of Elohim, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Wow. You know, we can look around in our world today and we see that God has really been taken out of everything, even the thoughts of man. Even in this pandemic that we've been through, whether you believe it's true or untrue or all the different things, but we know that God's in control. He uses natural things for a reason and a purpose. So basically what we need to do is quit kicking against the pricks and ask God, what's this for? What is it about me? Is it about me? You know, we even had, I think, a governor that said, prayer's not going to heal you this stuff, this virus. It has nothing to do with God. You had to just open the book. Just read this stuff here. There's a recompense for our actions, not only as people, but as a nation. Because that was the very thing. It's interesting that this starts out with the day of Yom Kippur, the day of salvation for the nation itself of Israel. This nation needs an atonement to come back to the Father. Maybe if we look around and see what's causing these problems. Or we can say, well, it's just natural. It's every year, you know, we have viruses that go around and so on and so forth. You know, it's interesting that they went to the extent of wanting everybody to stay home and basically lock your doors. Which we know that there's a couple of times that when God shut the door. One was when Noah and his family entered the ark. God shut that door. Noah didn't. It says in Revelation to the church of Philadelphia, he says, I set before you an open door that no man can shut, that I have opened. So while they're in that shut place, maybe it gives us a time to think, time to reflect. We're maybe not so caught up in all of our daily affairs and things that we can think about spiritual things. Hopefully that is what is taking place out of all this. Maybe that is the blessing that he's wanting to show us, that this is a time that we can kind of reset our own personal lives. As we read on in 2 Timothy 3:1, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Could we say that we're in the last times, last days? Well, we know that the scriptures say that there is a last time and last days. But then there says, well, you know, they will say, well, man's been saying that for hundreds of years, and it's never happened. It says, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of Yah, having a form of holiness, but denying the power thereof. From such things turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with divers lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Is this talking about a bunch of Gentiles, a bunch of heathens, a bunch of nations out there? Or is it talking about God's people? He's talking to his people. In Colossians 3:2, if you then be raised with the Messiah, seek those things which are above, where the Messiah sits on the right hand of Elohim. Set your affections on those things above, not on things on the earth. For you're dead, and your life is hid with the Messiah in Elohim. When the Messiah, who is our life, shall appear, then shall we also appear with him in splendor. Mortify, therefore, your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry, for which things' sake the wrath of Elohim comes on the children of disobedience. So he's talking about his children here, isn't he? Because what he did to the nations, he just spewed them out of the land. The Canaanites and all the other ites, even in Egyptians. But this is all in scriptures. We can read part of it in Haggai 2:4. It says, "Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith Yahweh, and be strong, O Joshua, son of Josedech, the high priest, and be strong, all you people of the land, says Yahweh, and work, for I am with you, says Yahweh of hosts. According to the word that I coveted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remains among you. Fear you not. For thus says Yahweh of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land." Is there a shaking going on possibly? He says, "But remember the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt." That covenant that was made at Mount Sinai. He says, "Because if you will obey my statutes and judgments, you will be my people and I will be your God." That was the covenant that he covenanted with those that came out of Egypt, which it also is us. Because that's what the scripture says in the Old Testament. He says, they made a covenant with them that stood there and those that were not there. And that is us to the end of the world. That same covenant, because that is our forefathers. That was in Egypt, down in Egypt. If you don't identify with that, then who are you identifying with? Are you continuously being identified as a Gentile? Gentile is one outside of God's covenants, or one of the nations, yet again outside of God's covenants. So there's only two identities that you can take. So if you're identifying as with Israel, then you're within the covenants and you follow the covenants. And he goes on, and this very same thing is repeated in Hebrews 12:24. "And to Yahshua, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel, seeing that you refused not him that speaks, for if they escaped not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven." Now, that was the very thing that took place at the mountain. And when God spoke from the mountain, the earth trembled and shook. And he says the mountain was on fire. And the people did what? They got scared, didn't they? Told Moses, "Oh man, we'll do everything he says, but don't let him speak to us again, because we'll surely die." Says, "For if they escape not who have refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven. Promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also the heaven." So if you think that shaking there at Mount Sinai was pretty awesome, there's a bigger shaking coming, evidently. Hebrews 12:26, "Whose voice then shook the earth, but now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And in this word, yet once more, signifies the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that are made, that those things which cannot be shaken may remain." Are you unshakable? Are we unshakable? That's the question. When this shaking goes and continues on, are you going to be able to stand? Are you going to be like them? "Oh, tell Father, don't talk to us no more. It's shaking too much." "Wherefore we receive a kingdom which cannot be moved." Let us have grace whereby we may serve Elohim acceptably with reverence and awe. For our Elohim is a consuming fire. So we saw that after the death of Messiah, his commandments and statutes and judgments, instructions are still the same. So we can look at this after his death in a broader, bigger way. It brought forth more understanding in the time of the Levites. It brought more instructions for them how to miss the pitfalls that they could fall into, how that they could rise a little bit higher in their walk with the Father. So going back to Leviticus, now we're in Leviticus 19. It says, And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say unto them, Ye shall be holy, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am holy. Kedoshim. This is the part of the Torah portion that's Kedoshim, holy, set apart. He says, You can be holy, for I am holy. You know, that's the very thing that when we say anything like that to most people, they say, Oh, no, brother, nobody can be holy. You know, your righteousness is as the filthy rags and so forth. Yeah, our righteousness is. But when we live and walk in his righteousness, we can be holy. As holy as being set apart, being able to discern between the holy and the profaned, the clean and the unclean. That discernment that he gives us is what sets us apart. You shall fear every man his mother and his father, and keep my Shabbats. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Turn you not into idols, nor make to yourselves molten Elohims. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. How many times he keeps reminding them who he is, who's got the authority here to speak. Remember when Yeshua was here and he rose up and was speaking, the Pharisees and they come to him and says, By what authority are you saying these things? Because we didn't give you no authority to say that. But his Father gave him the authority, right? It says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And going on in verse 16, Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among your people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yahweh. Just in case you forgot it in the verse before. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. They shall in any wise rebuke your neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. What does that mean? Rebuke your neighbor. Is that to go out and say, man, you're going to hell, what you're doing? No, in a loving manner. Saying, brother, there's maybe a better way. Save him maybe from his sin. Thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people. But thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. In case you forgot, I am Yahweh. Shall not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people. It's pretty easy to hold a grudge, isn't it? Especially if you felt like that you've been wronged. Somebody's taking advantage of you or whatever. says not to bear any grudge against the children of God, nor avenge, for what the Scripture says, for vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. He will avenge every wrong. He will right every wrong. Because he knows in so doing, if you take a vengeance, then you're sin. You've done as bad as he is, the guy that you're trying to take a vengeance against. He calls us to do what? Forgiveness. Without forgiveness, then there's no forgiveness for us. Matthew 18:15. This is the basis. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained a brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with him one or two more, that in the mouth of two or three witnesses every word may be established. But it all comes back to the idea, how do you go to your brother and talk to him about trespass that he's done to you? Do you go in anger? Do you go seeking vengeance? You're not going to get what you want. You're going to get more anger, more sin, and so on and so forth. So it's, as the old saying goes, it's not what you say, is how you say it. Right? You go there with an humble heart, seeking forgiveness and giving forgiveness. You've done your part of this thing. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the assembly. But if he neglect to hear the assembly, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. Then came Peter to him and said, Master, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Yeshua said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but I say until 70 times 7. So you need to get out your notebook, calculator, and every time that you go to him and talk to him, you punch it on there until you get 70 times 7. Then you're relieved of that duty. No, I think it's more to it than that. I think it's meaning everlasting, forever. The old question's always been, how long is forever? Forever. That's how long it is. Ephesians 5:10. Proving what is acceptable unto the sovereign, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doeth make manifest is light. See then that you walk diligently, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Wherefore be you not unwise, but understanding what the will of the sovereign is. That should be our prayer. That should be our to seek daily. What is your will for me? What is my purpose in this life? It says it's to do the will of the Father. Because the greatest, Yeshua himself, said, I come to do the will of my Father. He didn't come and do his own will. He didn't come and say, yeah, you know, the old man, his rules, I don't know. No, he said, I come and did the will of my Father. The words I spoke was the words that my Father gave me. 2 Timothy 5:20 says, "Them that sin rebuke before all, that others also may fear." You know, we lose a lot of the nuances of words in the translations from different languages, from Hebrew even into English. Rebuke, a pretty strong word, isn't it? I just wonder if the nuance in the Hebrew is a little bit softer, kinder, but making the same point, arriving at the same place. And this is a condemnation that light is coming to the world, and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. If you look at most thieves and things of that nature, do they operate in the daylight? Most of the time, not. It's usually in the cover of darkness, usually about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because when you shine that light on them, their deeds will show up, what they're doing. It says, "For everyone that doeth evil hates the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they were wrought in Yahweh. He that says he is in the light and hates his brother is in darkness even unto now. He that loves his brother abides in the light, and there is none occasion of stumbling in him. But he that hates his brother is in darkness and walks in darkness, and knows not whither he goes, because that darkness has blinded his eyes." First John 3:4 says, "Whosoever commits sin transgresses also the law, for sin is a transgression of the law." This one sentence here, if people would just remember it and just think about it, instead of going about telling everybody that, well, God did away with the law. Well, then evidently you've never sinned. Everything that you do is right. Everything that you speak is correct. Because the very definition of sin is a transgression of the law. And you know that he was manifest to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. Whosoever abides in him sins not. Whosoever sins hath not seen him, neither known him. Here's the crux of the matter. It says, "Whosoever abides in him sins not." There's the if. If you will walk in his path, if you will do his commandments, if you will do everything that he did for his Father, then you will sin not. "Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous." There's your definition of righteous. Right doing. He that doeth righteousness is righteous. Comes down to obedience, right? "In this the children of Elohim are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of Elohim, neither he that loves not his brother. For this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another." Beginning? Well, was that in John 1? Where God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son? No. At the very gate of Garden of Eden, when he asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" He says, "Am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to love my brother?" Love was manifest from the very beginning. Not as Cain, who was of that wicked one and killed his brother. And why did he kill him? Because his own works were evil and his brother's righteous. So you kill somebody for doing right, for doing righteous? Wow. How about 6 million Jews killed for doing right, doing righteous? How about the martyrs killed for doing right, doing righteousness? First John 3:13 says, "Marvel not, my brethren, if the world hates you. We know that we have passed from death into life because we love the brethren. He that loves not his brother abides in death. Whosoever hates his brother is a murderer, and ye know that no murderer hath everlasting life abiding in him. Hereby perceive we love, because he laid down his life for us." We want that love, don't we? Him laying down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brethren. "And he that keeps his commandments dwells in him, and he in him. And hereby we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit which he has given us." Do you have a right spirit within you? That was one of the Psalms, isn't it? God, give me the right spirit. Cleanse my heart. Matthew 5:21, "You have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment, and whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of counsel. But whosoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of Gehenna, or hell of fire." Envying, murders, drunkenness, revilings, such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in the times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of Yahweh. Well, that's what he was saying in Leviticus, right? It says if you don't want to follow these rules and regulations and commandments and statutes and judgments, you're not going to have life. You will not inherit the kingdom of Yahweh. "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such things is no law. And they that are the Messiahs have impelled the flesh with the affections and lust. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit." So, what is the Spirit that we're walking in, or you're supposed to walk in? If we're truly walking in His Spirit, then we will be doing the things that He did while He was here. We can't say, well, I've got the Spirit, and so He tells me, basically I can do what I want to because I've got the Spirit. Really? Back to Leviticus 19. "You shall keep my statutes. They shall not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. Neither shall a garment mingled of linen and wool come upon thee. And you may put difference, that you may put difference between the holy and the unholy, and between the unclean and clean." I'm sure that you've heard people when you tell them about, following God's law, they'll say, well, have you ever wore garments of linen and wool together? Have you ever done this and done that? Well, you can't keep the law. There's no way. It's what he's trying to teach us is to have the perception to know what is clean and unclean. If we never know that, then how are we going to get to the place of holiness or righteousness? If there's no standards of knowing what to judge it against. So that it becomes a free-for-all. Everybody makes their own rules and regulations. And that's what it said. It says there was a time without the kings that man did whatever they thought was good in their own mind. in Ezekiel 44:23, and they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. So that's what we're to do, because he's talking about the priest here in Ezekiel. As we as priests of our own household in particular, we have to teach not only our household, but people we come in contact, what the difference is between holy and profane and unclean and clean. And if there's no standard to hold it up to, then how can you teach people? Because most people you talk to in this world, you can talk about clean and unclean food, and they look at you like you fell off the planet. What are you talking about? Everything's good. You know, God made all things good. And if he didn't, then the blood of Jesus will cover it anyway. Really? If you don't know the difference between unclean and clean, you're lost out there wandering around between the holy and the profane. It says, her priests have violated my law and have profaned mine holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and the profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths. Wow. And I am profaned among them. So one of the differences between holy and profane is God's Sabbath. Wow. Holy and profane. So when you change God's Sabbath, is it that holy or is that profane? You've profaned the Sabbath, haven't you? Wow. Matthew 13:24 says, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. And when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in your field? From whence then hath it tares? You've had a yard in West Texas. You see this all the time. You put in good grass seed, what do you see? You got a bunch of weeds coming up with that grass. And you didn't put it down there. So how did it get there? It says, and he said unto them, an enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, wilt thou then that we go and gather them out? It's almost becomes futile to try to do it, even in our yards. But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them, that both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, gather you together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn, but gather the wheat into my barn. Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field, he says. And he answered and said unto them, he that sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. Isn't it great? We don't have to worry about reaping, making that decision and choice, who's a tare and who's a wheat. Sometimes we want to take it upon ourselves, though. Wow, that guy over there, I don't think he's going to make it. No, he said the reapers are the angels. He says, don't worry about that. That's above your pay grade. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned into fire, so it shall be in the end of the world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them that do iniquity. So how would the angels know what to gather out of the field if they don't know the difference between unclean and clean, holy and profane? Then it would be maybe just a beauty contest. Huh? Who is the prettiest? Who's the most successful, maybe, or something? And shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Deuteronomy 22:9 says, Thou shalt not sow thy vineyard with diverse seeds, lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled. We can see all these things agriculturally wise, why that you wouldn't want to do that. You know, because even in nature, if certain trees are close enough to each other, they will cross-pollinate without man's help, basically. Because the bees and the birds and stuff of that nature, if they're basically probably within the same family, they can cross-pollinate. You have peach cots and stuff of that nature sometimes. But he says, don't go out there and try to manipulate the seed. So the vineyard with diverse seeds, because it will be defiled. Now will I sing to my well-beloved a song. This is Isaiah 5:1. Of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved has a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. And he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof and planted it with the choicest vine and built a tower in the midst of it. And also made a wine press therein. And he looked that he should bring forth grapes, but it brought forth wild grapes. Wow. You'd have to go back to the feed store and say, hey, what's the deal here? I bought these good seeds and they brought forth wild grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, between me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes. He's not talking just about grapes. He's talking about you and me. Because the vineyard is the house of Israel. And he is the steward over the vineyard. Isaiah 5:5. And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the walls thereof, and it shall be trodden down. And I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I also will command the clouds that they do not rain upon it. For the vineyard of Yahweh of hosts is the house of Israel. And the men of Judah his pleasant plant, and he looked for judgment, but behold, oppression, for righteousness, but behold, a cry. Therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge. Wow. We are accused of, in this movement, that we're all about knowledge, and we're not about love. Really? If you have no knowledge, how do you know what to love or how to love? If you have no knowledge, how do you know what's clean and unclean or holy and unholy? It says, therefore my people are gone into captivity, and part of God's people are still in captivity, basically. The 10 tribes of Israel are scattered all over the world. He's calling us back to gain the knowledge of who we are, the knowledge of God's laws and rules and regulation, the knowledge of his kingdom, the knowledge that we can be part of that temple as a part of the body of Yeshua. It says, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Well, they even got things out there that's sour and sweet together. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Matthew 21 says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard." What is the vineyard? House of Yahweh, house of Israel. That is the vineyard. He's hired people to come in and work in his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idly in the marketplace, and said unto them, "Go you also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you." And they went their way. And again he went out about the sixth and ninth hour and did likewise. So this whole idea of a clock is basically the history of this world. In the first hours of this world's history, those that was working in his vineyard would basically start with Adam and Eve, right? He called them into his vineyard, his garden, to work. So then he goes out about the third hour. What may be Noah and his offspring. It says, "Go forth and multiply and teach the knowledge that you have unto your family as it multiplies." Said then he goes out about the sixth and the ninth hour. He begins to call all the prophets. And what were the prophets called for? Was to correct and bring forth better grapes in his vineyard. To point out, don't put that bad seed in my vineyard. It's unholy. It's corrupted. But they kill the prophets. And then about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idly, and saying to them, "Why stand you all the day idle? I got plenty of work." You don't have to get on the unemployment line, apply for unemployment. I got plenty of work here in my vineyard. And they say unto him, "Because no man has hired us." And he says unto them, "Go you also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall you receive." So when even was come, the master of the vineyard says unto the steward, "Were we possibly standing idly in the marketplace, and he called us?" This is the 11th hour, remember? Because when that clock hits the 12th hour, that's the time allotted for this world as it is. So when it was even, the master of the vineyard says unto his steward, "Call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first." Well, that don't sound right. And when they came that was hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. Because, hey, man, we've been working this thing a long time from the beginning. These people only worked 1 hour. You're giving them a penny, same as we're us? What is the penny? Everlasting life. And when they had received it, they murmured against the goodman of the house, saying, "These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal to us, and which have borne the burden in the heat of the day." But he answered one of them and said, "Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny? Take that thine is, and go thy way, and I will give unto this last even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? So the last shall be first, and the first last, for many be called, but few chosen." Why was the last first? because they are the laborers that's going to be alive at the end. That last hour, working in his vineyard. And we know that the ultimate payment is eternal life. This is in Mark 12:29. Getting pretty close. I'm going to finish up here in a minute. If you can hang with us a little longer. I know maybe this whole service has been long, but I hope you've enjoyed the worship part of it. These are some of the new things that we've been incorporating here during this time that we haven't been here. I want to give special thanks to Kobe and Rodney and those that have worked on the sound system and so forth and so on. And there's more to come that will be, I think, very beneficial to everyone. It says, and Yeshua answered him, the first of all the commandment is, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh is one. The very thing that we say here amongst our prayers. And thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, with all thy soul, because in reality a lot of times we have a disconnect even here, because the first slide just says the first of all commandment is, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. But the rest of the story is on the next slide, but it's all part of the Shema. Shema means to hear. That was the thing that he said at the mountain. Shema, hear my voice. It says, and thou shalt love Yahweh the Elohim with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy understanding, with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Whoa, we're good. We only have two commandments now instead of 10. Well, truly, if you followed the first one and the second one, that's all you would need. Because if you love Elohim with all your heart, soul, and mind, and with all your understanding, with all your strength, all the other 9 commandments you would be doing. Right? There is none other commandment greater than these. And the scribe says unto him, Well, teacher, thou hast said the truth, for there is one Elohim, and there is none other but he. And to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, with all the soul, with all the strength, and to love his neighbor as himself is more than the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices. Because if you're doing this, you don't need sacrifices and burnt offerings, right? Because you won't be sinning. And when Yeshua saw that he answered discreetly, he said unto him, Thou art not far from the kingdom of Elohim. Well, I thought that all that stuff had been done away with. If we could do what we wanted to, we're covered by the blood of Jesus. Daniel 9:3. And I set my face unto Yahweh Elohim to speak by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed unto Yahweh my Elohim and made my confession and said, O Yahweh, the great and dreadful El, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him and to them that keep his commandments. We have sinned and have committed iniquity, and have done wickedly, and have rebelled, even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments. This was the prayer to Yahweh while they were in captivity in Babylon. He prayed for the sins of the whole nation of Israel. In fact, he prayed 3 times a day for Israel. You know, we've talked about this before, that we ought to pray at least twice a day. In the morning and evening sacrifice time. The morning is at 9 o'clock, the evening is at 3 o'clock. This is when the continual burnt offering was offered, at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. This is the time that Messiah entered onto the cross at 9 o'clock, gave up his life at 3 o'clock. So it might be a good thing to have our prayers sessions at those times. Matthew 18:19, again I say unto you, that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. What a promise. Wow. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. And in 1 John 3:22, and whosoever we ask, and whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. What? Whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. Wow. So if you've been lacking in anything, maybe you need to start keeping his commandments. The blessings will flow. I don't guarantee you a new Mercedes or anything of that nature. But you can't outgive and you can't outworship the Father. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorohodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.